is not loading again, so might need to refresh or something. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, can you see me now?
There we go.
Oops. Ben was in, Ben is out. Okay.
Yeah, that's somebody I think I've seen before that
That's
like
okay.
plays insane music or something. So okay. You're all set. You're in here now. So I can hop out.
Thank you, Matt. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your patience. And yes, Matt did the right thing, because when I am not here, I am reading. So that caught my attention. All right. Hey, ready to start over? How's that for break of stage? All right, we're going to start again. 2/3 of the way down, page 197. The emotions are states of mind. Nature has provided man with a chemistry of the mind, which operates in a manner similar to the principles of chemistry of matter. It is a well-known fact that through the aid of chemistry of matter, a chemist may create a deadly poison by mixing certain elements, none of which are in themselves harmful in the right proportions. The emotions may likewise be combined so as to create a deadly poison. The emotions of sex and jealousy, when mixed, may turn a person into an insane beast. The presence of any one or more of the destructive emotions in the human mind, through the chemistry of the mind, sets up a poison which may destroy one's sense of justice and fairness. In extreme cases, the presence of any combination of these emotions in the mind may destroy one's reason. The road to genius consists of the development, control, and use of sex, love, and romance. Briefly, the process may be stated as follows. Encourage the presence of these emotions as the dominating thoughts in one's mind, and discourage the presence of all the destructive emotions. The mind is a creature of habit. It thrives upon the dominating thoughts fed it. Through the faculty of willpower, one may discourage the presence of any emotion and encourage the presence of any other. Control of the mind through the power of will is not difficult. Control comes from persistence and habit. The secret of control lies in understanding the process of transmutation. When any negative emotion presents itself in one's mind, it can be transmuted into a positive or constructive emotion by the simple procedure of changing one's thoughts. There is no other road to genius than through voluntary self-effort. A man may attain great heights of financial or business achievement solely by the driving force of sex energy. But history is filled with evidence that he may, and usually does, carry with him certain traits of character which rob him of the ability to either hold or enjoy his fortune. This is worthy of analysis, thought, and meditation, for it states a truth, the knowledge of which may be helpful to women as well as men. Ignorance of this has cost thousands of people their privilege of happiness, even though they possessed riches. The emotions of love and sex leave their unmistakable marks upon the features. Moreover, these signs are so visible that all who wish may read them. The man who is driven by the storm of passion, based upon sex desires alone, plainly advertises that fact to the entire world by the expression of his eyes and the lines of his face. The emotion of love, when mixed with the emotion of sex, softens, modifies, beautifies the facial expression. No character analyst is needed to tell you this. You may observe it for yourself. The emotion of love brings out and develops the artistic and the aesthetic nature of man. It leaves its impress upon one's very soul, even after the fire has been subdued by time and circumstance. Memories of love never pass. They linger, guide, and influence long after the source of stimulation has faded. There is nothing new in this. Every person who has been moved by genuine love knows that it leaves enduring traces upon the human heart. The effect of love endures because love is spiritual in nature. The man who cannot be stimulated to great heights of achievement by love is hopeless. He is dead, though he may seem to live. Even the memories of love are sufficient to lift one to a higher plane of creative effort. The major force of love may spend itself and pass away, like a fire which has burned itself out, but it leaves behind indelible marks as evidence that it passed this way. Its departure often prepares the human heart for still greater love. Go back into your yesterdays at times and bathe your mind in the beautiful memories of past love. It will soften the influence of the present worries and annoyances. It will give you a source of escape from the unpleasant realities of life. And maybe, who knows, your mind will yield to you during this temporary retreat into the world of fantasy ideas or plans which may change the entire financial or spiritual status of your life. If you believe yourself unfortunate because you have loved and lost, perish the thought. One who has loved truly can never lose entirely. Love is whimsical and temperamental. Its nature is ephemeral and transitory. It comes when it pleases and goes away without warning. Accept and enjoy it while it remains, but spend no time worrying about its departure. Worry will never bring it back. Dismiss also the thought that love never comes but once. Love may come and go, times without number, but there are no two love experiences which affect one in just the same way. There may be, and there usually is, one love experience which leaves a deeper imprint on the heart than all the others. But all love experiences are beneficial, except to the person who becomes resentful and cynical when love makes its departure. There should be no disappointment over love, and there would be none if people understood the difference between the emotions of love and sex. The major difference is that love is spiritual, while sex is biological. No experience which touches the human heart with a spiritual force can possibly be harmful except through ignorance or jealousy. Love is, without question, life's greatest experience. It brings one into communion with infinite intelligence. When mixed with the emotions of romance and sex, it may lead one far up the ladder of creative effort. The emotions of love, sex, and romance are sides of the eternal triangle of achievement-building genius. Nature creates genii through no other force. Love is an emotion with many sides, shades, and colors. The love which one feels for parents or children is quite different from that which one feels for one's sweetheart. The one is mixed with the emotion of sex, while the other is not. The love which one feels in true friendship is not the same as that felt for one's sweetheart, parents, or children, but it too is a form of love. Then there is the emotion of love for things inanimate, such as the love of nature's handiwork. But the most intense and burning of all these various kinds of love is that experienced in the blending of the emotions of love and sex. Marriages not blessed with the eternal affinity of love, properly balanced and proportioned with sex, cannot be happy ones, and seldom endure. Love alone will not bring happiness in marriage, nor will sex alone. When these two beautiful emotions are blended, marriage may bring about a state of mind closest to the spiritual that one may ever know on this earthly plane. When the emotion of romance is added to those of love and sex, the obstructions between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence are removed. Then a genius has been born. What a different story is this than those usually associated with the emotion of sex. Here is an interpretation of the emotion which lifts it out of the commonplace and makes of it potter's clay in the hands of God, from which he fashions all that is beautiful and inspiring. It is an interpretation which would, when properly understood, bring harmony out of the chaos which exists in too many marriages. The disharmonies, often expressed in the form of nagging, may usually be traced to lack of knowledge on the subject of sex. Where love, romance, and the proper understanding of the emotion and function of sex abide, there is no disharmony between married people. Fortunate is the husband whose wife understands the true relationship between the emotions of love, sex, and romance. When motivated by this holy triumvirate, no form of labor is burdensome, because even the most lowly form of effort takes on the nature of a labor of love. It is a very old saying that a man's wife may either make him or break him, but the reason is not always understood. The making and breaking is the result of the wife's understanding or lack of understanding of the emotions of love, sex, and romance. Despite the fact that men are polygamous by the very nature of their biological inheritance, it is true that no woman has as great an influence on a man as his wife, unless he is married to a woman totally unsuited to his nature. If a woman permits her husband to lose interest in her and become more interested in other women, it is usually because of her ignorance or indifference toward the subjects of sex, love, and romance. This statement presupposes, of course, that genuine love once existed between a man and his wife. The facts are equally applicable to a man who permits his wife's interest in him to die. Married people often bicker over a multitude of trivialities. If these are analyzed accurately, the real cause of the trouble will often be found to be indifference or ignorance on these subjects. Man's greatest motivating force is his desire to please woman. The hunter who excelled during prehistoric days before the dawn of civilization did so because of his desire to appear great in the eyes of woman. Man's nature has not changed in this respect. The hunter of today brings home no skins of wild animals, but he indicates his desire for her favor by supplying fine clothes, motor cars, and wealth. Man has the same desire to please woman that he had before the dawn of civilization. The only thing that has changed is his method of pleasing. Men who accumulate large fortunes and attain to great heights of power and fame do so mainly to satisfy their desire to please women. Take women out of their lives and great wealth would be useless to most men. It is this inherent desire of man to please woman which gives woman the power to make or break a man. The woman who understands man's nature and tactfully caters to it need have no fear of competition from other women. Men may be giants with indomitable willpower when dealing with other men, but they are easily managed by the women of their choice. Most men will not admit that they are easily influenced by the women they prefer because it is in the nature of the male to want to be recognized as the stronger of the species. Moreover, the intelligent woman recognizes this manly trait and very wisely makes no issue of it. Some men know that they are being influenced by the women of their choice, their wives, sweethearts, mothers, or sisters, but they tactfully refrain from rebelling against the influence because they are intelligent enough to know that no man is happy or complete without the modifying influence of the right woman. The man who does not recognize this important truth deprives himself of the power which has done more to help men achieve success than all forces combined. Whew, I'm back. The road to genius. All right, if you're a man with high sex energy, you need a woman to temper it, right? And if you're a woman who is with a man who is that high sex energy, recognize it. Work together. Make sure you're a good fit. But put that element of love in there. And I'm the first one to tell you marriage is the best thing that's ever happened to man and woman. Good things happen in good marriages. So what I found interesting, that is there you go, Chuck. There you go. Mama ain't happy. No one's happy. Start bringing the kids in and the family to get unit, and you can see it. You can see it. So it goes back to previous discussions, doesn't it? Of men can be inspired to greatness and motivated to greatness if they have the right combination of love, sex, romance when it comes to their partner and their woman that they select, when they elevate themselves past just that physical, biological. And as I talked about before, on the woman's side, while we're made differently, we still have those needs of wanting to care and nurture and be a part of and be in control. Sometimes it comes out as absolute control. That can be tempered when the mix is there of love, romance, and sex. The combination, again, is pretty powerful. What I am an advocate of marriage. Absolutely, I am. I think that it's detrimental to both men and women in general. Of course, there's always exceptions. But in general, it is detrimental for a man or a woman to be alone. I honestly believe we need each other. And when we can recognize that and recognize how it fits, we can be better. And what Napoleon Hill, I think, is telling us is that we can be powerful. We can tap into a power greater than ourselves because of that. Yes, Matt, the ever always seeking or always be open to. Oh, always be open to finding the right woman. All right, so we have some new people. CJ. Hi, CJ. Good to see you here. Welcome. Glad you're with us. Brian, thank you for helping me to recognize that I needed to refresh. JJ, welcome. Good morning to you. Evangelos, so good to see you here again this morning. And Ron, good friend Ron, good to see you this morning. Hoping that everybody's morning is going well so far. Big thank you to Matt, who helped us get started. Appreciate that. So here we are. We're talking about the road to genius. And one of the statements that is bolded or in caps, which is for emphasis, in the book says there is no other road to genius than through voluntary self-effort. So let's get off of the sex and love and romance. How's that? And instead talk about where he says, you know what? When you have negative emotions or negative thoughts come into play. Encourage the presence of the positive thoughts. Encourage the presence of those that are constructive, maybe not positive, but constructive. And we have that power. That's what he's telling us. We have that power. Through the faculty of willpower, we can discourage the presence of any emotion. And control comes from persistence and habit. It comes from, so let me share my own experience. Why? Because nobody's hitting the seat to share theirs. So you're going to get mine. So I have learned and have deployed this many, many, many times throughout my 50 some odd years of dealing with people, how to maintain a level of self-control. And when I use that to get creative or focused on what needs to happen for the day, it's really beneficial. And what I do is take a breath before I speak. Sometimes I have to take a step back. What I really am uncomfortable with is very strong emotion. So if I'm reacting very strongly to something somebody is saying, I take a breath and I try to temper that strong emotion, take a real quick look to see what's going on here. What's the best response? What can I do with this? And not necessarily change it, but sometimes I can. Sometimes when I'm confronted with something that I can get very angry about, or something that is just surprising, and I have an immediate reaction to say something, right, which I shouldn't say. I'm thankful that I have that ability to take a breath and say, I don't know that I'm going to say anything just yet, but instead I'm going to turn it around. Now, that's just the general overview. How do we replace one set of thoughts with another? So there was a time, those of you who know me are going to say, oh yeah, she's told this before. There was a time when I was absolutely terrified of people, places, and things. Very, very frightened of just conversations. I didn't know how to have conversations with people. Very high anxieties. Lot of things involved. And one of the ways I learned to cope was to turn that emotion or that thought of being frightened into one of curiosity. So make that, I guess we could say, I make that the dominating thought. I'm more curious about you than I am frightened of you. And over time, it became a habit, and over time, it became a part of how I interact with other people. And it's very helpful in looking at it right now as I'm thinking about it, as to articulate how to change a destructive thought or emotion into something positive. And it's something that I can draw on. So that, as you all know, that does not stop me from being suddenly anxious. Do not put me in a room of 400 people and expect me to walk in calmly. It's not good. The immediate anxiety occurs, right? But I can continue to walk in, just not calmly. Everything inside, I'm like the duck on on the water. Everything on top looks nice and clean and smooth, but boy, am I paddling like crazy underneath. And that's all that anxiety occurs. But what's happening is, and I've done this in rooms of 200 people, I've done this in rooms of 10, and I've done this in rooms of as many as far as I know, the biggest room I've ever walked in had just under 1,000 people in it. And even now I'm feeling it. It was, take a breath, take a look. There's no reason to be frightened. I'm curious about why all these people are here. I'm curious about what they are going to learn while we are here. And just take your time and walk forward. And that's how I'm able to walk into big rooms, even when I'm the one that's going to go on stage. Stage fright hits. That's what happens. Turn it into that thought of, when I say curious, what's going through my head is wonder what you're doing here. Wonder why you're here. Wonder what you're going to learn. It's going to be interesting to see what you have to say afterwards. That's what goes through the head. And so it's become a habit. And I can combat that destructive fright, fear, and anxiety and I can replace it. So that's one way. That's one example. And as you all know, I got a fantastic hubby who inspires me to do that. He encourages me, inspires me. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Good to see you, dear.
Good to see you. Yeah, I was interested in the part reading that it was just talking about the how it was voluntary, and I always go back to like that awareness. And right now I'm reading a book about habits, and it talks about the ability to like be present enough to see an urge happening.
Yes.
So that herded U curve analogy. I know you were watching one of my
it was wonderful.
I hosted one. The ability to sit on an urge until it comes and then it passes. It's kind of what you're talking about, talking to somebody or something. Like one time I was in choir practice and I had to pick somebody to do the solo in the song, and I was like sitting there like waiting for someone to volunteer. I didn't want to do it because I've done it before, and then nobody did it, and then somebody voluntarily like spoke up and said I should do it, and I had to do it. So I was kind of taken aback. It was just surprising. And then you can, when that happens to you, can kind of, your heart starts to beat a little bit and you're like kind of taken aback. Like it's sort of that fight or flight response maybe. The ability, I think, to sit on that and then, like you said, take a breath and become more present or be the awareness behind that thought that happened allows you to respond to it instead of just react into it.
Exactly. Yes. So now the question is, how can we tap into that ability to get us on the road to genius, to tap into that creative intelligence, the infinite intelligence, that which is greater than ourselves, to see better?
Yeah.
To create something bigger?
Part of it is when we create habits and we sort of have an idea of how something should be, and then the reality that it's sort of that mismatch between reality and how we want it to be that can cause resistance to us. So I do think, like you said, that curiosity is really important, because then if we're curious about it, then we're not resisting what is, we're sort of helping to learn about it and us to it and make it our own, kind of change it for the better, instead of building up a wall and saying, this is how it is, I'm not going to accept this. And that resistance, like it says, it does kill our resistance when we resist everything.
Yes, it does. So we break down the resistance because that's destructive, and we replace it with something else. So now I'm thinking, I mean, we have the control of the mind through willpower, and some of it takes practice, as mine has in that one instance, you know, because I felt I had to. If I was going to be out in the world and be a business owner, I had to overcome this. I had to do something. And I pulled on. Now, that's not to say all that came to me, within days or a year or even overnight. What I was pulling on was years of coping skills that I had learned and deployed throughout my life to cope with sudden changes, to cope with overwhelming circumstances, a lot of what could be destructive, but that, this is not even survival skills, just the coping skills. Okay. So I actually pulled on those experiences to be able to come up with a way to combat and remove those destructive emotions, which are the destructive thoughts. So what do you think? How can you articulate it in a different way? Maybe.
From my perspective, it's a lot about self-reflection and being able to have enough awareness just to ground yourself enough in the present moment to be able to see what's happening and how you're reacting to things. Because if you're constantly cycling feedback loops into emotions and thought patterns that are destructive, and you never stop and sit on those thoughts and feelings and like just make them conscious enough to realize they're there, then you're constantly reacting to everything, and it's a very long cycle. And I think when they're talking about balancing the emotions in relationships, it's a lot of those chemicals. He was talking chemistry of the mind, and it made me think about those dopamine and oxytocin.
Yeah, I thought of you as I was reading it.
And I do think the key is to make sure that oxytocin and serotonin and those ones that are more constructive, just like our thoughts are constructive, you're building the release of those chemicals more, or leaning toward those instead of constant dopamine firing and feedback, because that can get really unhealthy, because we know that not only really can fire dopamine, but like you said, being alone and doing something, or if you're eating all the time, or different things. So
we've got some balance in there, is what you're talking about. But also, and I did think of you when he was talking about the chemistry of the mind. So the thing is that we don't think in terms of the chemistry of the mind, right? I don't think about, so how are my levels of dopamine? Trust me, I would if I could. That is the way my brain works. But, I don't know enough to even think about how to measure, because that to me is logical, reasonable, and something that I could actually try to figure out how to do. But instead, what he's telling us, so what he's telling us is that we can encourage the change of thought. So instead of always living in the past and bringing up the horrifying things in the past of how horrible life has been, and I want to feel bad, so I'm going to feel worse by bringing up these horrible things in my past, right? Anybody ever done that? I'm just going to sit on the pity pot for 5 minutes. 5 hours later,
that's just from like identifying with the past all the time. Some people like that back.
That's it, and it is living in the past, because it's taking those memories to reinforce the bad that's happening right now. It always happens this way. I always have these horrible things, right?
You gotta be able to let that go. This is the moment. This is the now.
And now we're to the awareness.
That happened. That was all over ago. All right.
Yeah, all over ago. I like it. Yeah.
I'll let somebody else hop in here. Somebody else, come on.
Okay.
Come on, hop in.
Thank you, Matt, as always. Good stuff. So he's talking about, now what's the emotion of love? Whatever that love is, that the memory can come in and change the thoughts and the emotions that we have. So now I'm thinking, one of the things that I do, and this happens when I go meditate sometimes, when things aren't going the way I want them to, when people aren't doing what I want them to do, where does frustration lie, right? Nobody's doing what I want them to do. Things aren't happening quick enough. They're happening too fast. Nobody's doing, again, it's going to come down to nobody's doing what I want them to do. And I can be a force of nature, as any one of us can, and allow that frustration and that energy that can build up to overtake and just barrel through things. I can be a tornado or I can be a steamroller and just try to force things to happen. And what I'm agreeing with Napoleon Hill on is that can work temporarily, but it's not a sustainable way to gain riches and wealth. It's not a sustainable way to be the better person we're looking to be. I'm recognizing that while that can happen, I don't have to let it happen. I can have some control over what I would prefer to do versus really what is better for me to do. So deploy the same techniques of bringing all that baggage into something negative to reinforce the negative, right? The business deal went bad. All business deals go bad. It's just like last year when everything fell apart. It's just like 2 years ago when it could have fallen apart and then it did because I did something wrong. It's just whatever that may be, bringing all that baggage in. So instead, saying, like Matt was saying, being aware that, no, these are different people, different business deal. Where's my part in it? Let's relax a minute. Let's remember, I'm not in this all by myself. I've got somebody who loves me, who cares for me, who wants the best for me. That's my husband. I've got people who I call friendships and acquaintances and close dear family members. And Napoleon Hill mentions all of those and the importance of them in my life. And I can reflect on them and how they care for me and that I am better because they're in my life. And that can change my thoughts towards the business deal that went awry or the decisions, that beating up of myself. I don't know if anybody else here does that. I'm realizing the same thing can happen if we beat up on ourselves because of bad decisions, bad decisions. And that can happen to us. Well, I've done it. Yes, you've definitely experienced that. And my friend Brian is coming in.
Where? Oh.
There he is. There you are. Yes, you are.
I find it interesting as to how limiting our English language is, according to the word of love. I mean, we love everything. We love our cars. We love our food. We love, but
slinging that word around, right?
It is. And I like the way the Greeks do it, where they have 4 parts to love. They have the storge, or the parental love. They have the love for God. They have the love for family. And they have brotherly love. And then marriage is the only thing that ties all 4 of those things together. So to me, that's kind of an interesting perspective with regard
I like that.
to, I don't remember the 4 Greek words. One was agape, one was...
well, if I could bring my Greek friend in here, Maria will tell us. That's not a problem. And then she'll regale us with all that she knows.
But I find
about it.
How interesting that the English language.
Matt.
There you go.
Matt to the rescue. Agape.
Storge.
Storge or storge?
And it's actually.
And one other.
And I can't think of the other. But anyway, it takes 4 parts and encompasses.
Now, you know what I find interesting, Brian, is that's essentially, it's a better way of saying what Napoleon Hill was telling us. He was describing that that we have those others, and he described the other loves, the emotion for things inanimate in nature, and the various kinds of love. But then he elevates marriage just as you just did, to the one that is the best. That kind of love is the one that is that which can take us mentally into an area that makes us better. And we can tap into a creativity or, that level of genius that we can utilize to improve ourselves, but also to focus on our businesses, to do things better, to render better service, more quality service, new products, tackle problems, things of that sort. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think
Okay.
I think that it's I just think it's interesting how we are so limiting with what we determine and define by just slamming one word into it when it's so much more. So yeah.
You have an excellent point, and I think that I'm glad that you're here, because discussions like this help to remind me that it's useful to explore, that it's useful to, what's the first word of the book? Think. Let's think these through. Let's explore, and just kind of chat and see if something interesting comes of it, and becomes more than just the bandying about of a word.
Well,
pardon me?
I said I like the way the Psalms say that. Selah. Think on these things.
Yes.
So, in reality, I think that we need to redefine our definition a lot of times, especially with a word like love or a word like trust, because trust can be broken down into other sections, I guess, also.
Right.
So, I don't know. I just find that the limiting of the English language as we've grown accustomed to it is kind of, and I know no other language. I just study different books, things like that, and I just find it amazing.
Well, so what trips off of our tongue easier? Multiple descriptions of fear or multiple descriptions of love?
And that one too, the word fear breaks down into several different.
Again, which one trips off of our tongues easier? I think that's an interesting way to look at it too, is that I can describe fear in a bunch of different ways. You got anxiety, you've got anger, we've got frustration, annoyance. You've got some of your own, right?
From my understanding of it, they actually say when they're talking like a godly love, they say, I agapeo you, or it's some version of that.
So it's actually literally a different word to put the emphasis on the type of love that we're talking about.
So if it was romantic, the other one is eros. I just thought of it.
Okay.
Or erotic love. But
right.
Between a husband and wife, they would use that word. They would say, I'm not sure the vernacular, so I don't want to sound like a fool, but
but the idea is there. We're actually using a word that it's still saying I love you, but it's putting it in context.
Yeah, the storge, or I think the storge is the parental love, which would encompass the man, the wife, the kids. I storge you. The phileo is the brotherly love. That's where the city of Philadelphia gets its name. And so I think that it's interesting, in my perspective, that we limit ourselves.
I think it's very interesting, and I like that perspective, because we're going to go back to Matt, our awareness man, the importance of talking it through so that we can learn a different perspective and become aware of really how are we doing things? How are we looking at things? Because I don't know how I can get better if I don't take a look at all of this. I love the idea of being able to have the same emotion described in context. and you just heard me. I love that idea, right?
Yeah.
So I use it just as easily and as freely as you were describing that the word, it is just a word until put into context. But how much better is it when we can replace the word so that the emotion is still there and the context is immediately understood? I like that.
Definitely agree. Anyway,
I don't know that I could do it because you know what? I'm going to end up educating everybody as I tell them.
well, that gets a little annoying. But,
I mean, I'm already seeing me telling, putting it into using a different word and then having to explain why I'm using that. I don't know that I want my energy focused on that, but I do want my energy focused on what you were describing, which is, even if I don't have the words, I can recognize the emotion in context.
oh, I agree.
Right? So if I can recognize that emotion in context, I can have control over whether or not it's going to stay or it's going to move on.
Well, everything involves the definition of the word, and
yes.
no matter what you're talking about. I just find, I don't know why we've limited it to such a dynamic word, into such a one lump sum fit deal.
I can venture a guess. It's just easier. And it's easier and it's a commonplace and it's a lower plane. It's a lower plane, right? It's where most people live, in the easy and I don't have to think about it too much. It's different when you have people like you and I who are willing to explore it a little bit, and we're actually willing to think on it and to stretch our brains a bit and wonder and share what the thoughts are as we're wondering, which already puts us somewhat at a different level of a plane, if you will. We all know what Napoleon Hill was talking about, that if we stay at the common and the mediocre, that's our choice. Now that we've been exposed to something different, that's our choice. So I don't want to be at the mediocre. I want the higher plane. I want the active thinking. I want the active learning and going after. And that's why I do this. I want to be better. And from the comment area, we have, changing the words we use would definitely share a lot of depth of how we think of our relationships. Yes. Yes. And I think it's possible, if we give them more thought, that we can find words to better express the context of the emotion. Just as I could rattle off those that are associated with fear, and much quicker than those that are associated with love, because even though I'm trying to be at the higher plane, I'm not there yet. Everybody here's helping me to get there, though, and help me think a little differently. But what are our actions? So now here's another question. What are our actions with those words? Because sometimes it's the context is defined by our actions. And we can go back to what Napoleon Hill was saying, that we can tap into that power because when we're expressing it physically with our actions. And I say that because what does he say here? Married people often bicker over a multitude of trivialities. If they're analyzed accurately, the real cause of the trouble will often be found to be indifference or ignorance on these subjects we're just covering. Man's greatest motivating force is the desire to please woman. And it is that desire, that inherent desire, that gives women the power to make or break a man. And it's recognizing that we have that power. So it is that, that balance. So when we have the right partner and we have that balance, good things can happen. I can tap into a power because he's motivated to please me. And it's up to me whether I'm going to take advantage of that or respect it and nurture it. And he also, on his side, on the balance of power, in that the emotional power. We're not talking about the power struggle of who's in charge. We're talking about making us better people because we're more than who we are when we're together. And he can tap into that power because he does want to please me. He does things because he, as Chuck said earlier, when mama's happy, everybody's happy. But I have to recognize that as the woman in here, right? And I think that I can see that when I watch others, when I see women who recognize that they have that power and they respect that they have it and they use it in a way that's helpful and moving it forward and not destructive.
My mother was very good. She's still around? Is very good with that, and she got caught in the storge of this, where she actually, she was the typical mother. I'm gonna beat you if you don't knock it off, and she caught herself, and she goes, "No, I'm not."
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the perspective. We don't watch our words.
That awareness thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what Matt brought to my attention, and I'm so grateful that you did, because that's all that Napoleon Hill is talking about here, is that these emotions are so intense that they truly, without rein, can be harmful. When they're just let loose and we're driven by emotion. So now we have to bring in the other elements of being human, which is our thoughts and our physical and our spiritual. And it's that combination that makes us human, but also that makes us capable of being more in terms of just being.
You get the whole package when you get me. Oh.
There you go. That's it. The whole package. Gosh darn it.
So, and she agrees. And I'm going to go run her down. Have fun.
Okay. Thanks for joining me, Brian. It was good to see you. Bye-bye. So does it show that we've lost the time to show that we care? Do we do that so much with words anymore? I don't know. Do we? I think that is something that's worth considering for each of us. And I think that's what we're being encouraged to do by this reading, which is be aware. Be aware of why you're doing what you're doing. Acknowledge the fact that we have that sex energy. Acknowledge that and be truthful with it. And be truthful that we are more than just sex-driven animals, right? You men know this. Men who have grown enough to understand that you are more than just a sex-driven animal going after the physical constantly, by tapping into the one woman that made all the difference, that helped you to temper. And I'm going to go back to, with women, those who go to the extreme with the way we're made can be detrimental because it's destructive behavior. But if we think, if we think and we respect and we have that combination of that positive love, sex, and romance, and combined, and a partner, that's a genius that we can tap into. We can go into the infinite intelligence. We can focus our attention. I think it's good reminders for all of us. I want to welcome Daniel. Glad to have you with us. I believe you're new to the group. Good to see you, Dave. Been a day or so since I've seen you. Glad you're here. Anybody else dare hit the seat? I know, this is deep stuff. And, it might be a little too heavy for a Monday morning for some people. And I don't know that that's, I don't know it's anything more than it's really simple to say and hard to do. And yet, ultimately, one thing that keeps going through my mind is that we're not meant to be alone. And Napoleon Hill is recognizing the multiple types of love relationships that we have. that can make us better. And Brian, bringing in the Greek words, the love for God, the love for family, the love for husband, wife, or partner, the love for siblings or friends. They're all different levels of love, but it's still there. And those are things that I can tap into. And I have to remember I can tap into those, because trust me, I'm one to get stuck in my own head if I'm not careful. Always good to create that awareness of what we should be doing at the least. That helps to put it into action. Yes, it is. And, it's mornings like this, having somebody come into the live stream or into the comment area, and discussions like this that help me to stay focused and stay aware. That's why I do it. So glad you guys are joining me. So I've got just a few more minutes on the recording. If anybody wants to jump in and say hey. If not, I can shut the recording and then keep the room open for another 30 minutes or so. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying this way that I start my day. Weekdays, every weekday morning, 8 a.m. All right, then I shall stop the recording and then I'll keep the room open for another 30 minutes for anybody who wants to continue the discussion off the record. I'm going to thank everybody for your participation in the comments section. It was good to see you, and in the live stream, Matt and Brian, thank you so much for jumping in. It was good talking with you and hearing your perspectives. Love them. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses. So until next